What's happening, guys? Thanks for tuning in to this next edition of the Sunday Scary segment on the podcast. This segment is entirely dedicated to engaging with our community. It's a way for listeners and viewers like you to come onto the podcast and ask us questions or ask any previous guests that have had on, because sometimes they do pop into these discussion groups. These discussion groups operate a lot like a Twitter Spaces or a Clubhouse discussion room. So it's very open floor, formatted style. You don't need to be a crypto expert by any means to come in and talk. And there's a number of avenues to communicate with us while we're recording. So if you don't want to show up on video and want to do audio only, that's totally fine. There's also a chat function if you don't even want us to either see video or audio. So there's a lot of avenues, and I encourage anybody and anyone to come on because it's a great way to answer some questions that you might want answered that we haven't asked. We record these every Saturday at 10:30 Eastern time, and you can find links to enter the Zoom room on my Twitter and the podcast Twitter. You can find me at Allen, ALLEN Hodl, HODL on Twitter, and you can follow the podcast Twitter on COB Podcast. That is COB Podcast. And just as a friendly reminder, we may seem like financial experts, but ultimately we are not. So anything we say is not financial advice. All our discussions are purely for entertainment and educational purposes only. So I appreciate y'all tuning in. And I hope to meet some of you guys here in the future on some future Sunday Scaries recordings. So take care.
Why we're bullish with BTC sessions. And he had on me, Dread, Max Kaiser, and Stacy Kaiser to talk about why we're bullish. Kenny,
yo,
what's up, Kenny?
Getting more people in here. I see.
I'm invading your groups, or your classes, your people, bro.
I love it, dude.
Yeah, why is Dennis not? I met Kenny. Kenny, what's going on?
I met Kenny in Miami. He's a great guy.
Was that the first time you guys met?
Yeah.
Just recently?
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, I didn't even know who he was at all. And then I was like, I don't know about that Pomps course thing. And he was like, oh, actually, that's my course. I was like, oh, it's cool. Actually, I like it.
Well, and you met Moist and I too. And well, Kenny recently was like, dude, you should have Travis on. And I'm like, oh, Kenny, you know Travis? No way, dude. He's in our spaces all the time.
Yeah. Me and Eric are boys from college. And so that's it's him and Eric doing the Bitcoin EDU stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that you and Eric were as connected.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Moist, we can't hear you, dog. What's up, Dennis?
Oh, I was just nothing. It doesn't matter. What's going on, Moist?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
What's up, guys?
Moist is on vacation, so he's got a cool background. I can tell you're outside though.
I'm actually not. I was, but it's raining, so it would be loud.
Oh, nice.
There we go.
Whipped up some breakfast.
There we go. I got my coffee right here.
Cheers.
I did get a little bit confused this morning because I was like, wait, is today Sunday? And I had to recalibrate real quick.
Yeah,
the show's called Sunday Scaries, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking about changing the name because for one, it's
hard to record on Sundays.
We tried recording it on Sunday and then uploading in the same day. And it was like, there's just no way for to record and then edit the intro and outro and then upload on YouTube. It's just too much versus recording on a Saturday and then editing it all and then pending out for the publish date till Sunday morning. A little bit easier, but I'm thinking about changing the name because I realized, I guess Sunday Scaries is a Midwest saying. Everyone I've talked to is like, dude, what does that mean?
I've never heard of it.
That's not a Midwest saying.
I mean, I guess I've heard.
What does Sunday Scaries mean in the Midwest?
It means you're scared of the weekdays starting.
Yeah, it's just you put off all your responsibility all weekend, and then now you got the weekday or the week starting, and you're
Kenny, where are you at? What area of the country are you in?
I'm in Philly.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I've never heard. I've heard that someone say that. I'm over in the West Coast. I'm over in Portland, Oregon. So I've heard people say Sunday Scaries before, but I never knew that it actually had some sort of meaning.
Well, and it's also like usually like if you've been like partying all weekend and then life just smacks you in the head and you're like, shit, I got the scaries.
Yeah, the best
like
thing I ever heard about that was like if you're like watching football all day with your friends and then like 60 minutes hits. And that's,
when 60 minutes
and that's
comes
like
on?
the ultimate Sunday scary morning because you're like, fuck, I gotta be a real human tomorrow.
Nick, what's going on, man?
Yeah.
Glad
What's up,
to
guys?
see you joining here. A little bit of cohort 3.
Nick's new newsletter is fucking fire. The
I
first
read
two
it.
that he's put out
Did you like it,
it's
guys?
like really good.
That's been great.
Where are you?
Drop the link in the chat.
Yeah, drop some sort of link so we can.
It's been good getting
We
feedback.
can check it out. Are you on? What are you on? Substack?
Yeah, Substack. So I just kind of started it recently. I've always wanted to write, and so just found something that
That's awesome, dude.
made me want to do it. But like I said to like my wife, she doesn't really care too much about Bitcoin. I'm trying to convert. Then I've got.
Mine's the same, bro. I the other day I was like, you got to read a book about Bitcoin. You got to read something. She's like, I don't care about none of that bullshit. As long as you make money, that's all I care about.
Yeah, which is fine. That's fine. But like, maybe through this, something like this, it's like, I don't know. I started like sharing it with like Morgan told me he started his one of the guys from our cohort, one of the other coaches that he is just to like kind of share with his friends and family, just to teach them about it. And so that was kind of my idea for it mostly. And then if other, people enjoy it, that's awesome. And I appreciate it.
The internet is great for tickling the urge to talk about Bitcoin because honestly, I don't know what I would do without it. I that's what happened to me at the beginning because when I got involved in 2017, I was very private person, and so I tried to talk to some of the people around me, and it was a disaster because I didn't know enough about it, and there wasn't very many people willing to listen. And so when I decided to get on Clubhouse, this was my first big thing that I did in January. It was like a drug. I mean, it was incredible. It was nuts. Plus, I knew so much more because I'd been reading and learning about it. So it was awesome.
So tell me a little bit about Clubhouse. Kenny and Dennis, you guys are big over there. And like, I'm all Twitter Spaces over
Twitter Spaces
all the time.
24/7.
I fucking love it. It's addicting. It's super addicting.
It's definitely addicting.
There's so many great people in there. And then so there's like a group of like 20 of us. We have like our own little like group chat. And like, we'll like conglomerate together and be like, hey, we're in this altcoin space room. Let's go convert some of these shitcoiners. Or like someone will be like stumped on an argument or something. And like, we'll all like beeline to like a Twitter thread and just be like, no, you're fucking wrong.
Love that. It's like boots on the ground.
Oh, it's great. Well, we've been
biggest
thing we've been trying to figure out is how we're all going to get down to El Salvador for like a week and just like donate just some time and a lot of sats to people there just to kind of show them how the wallets function, how they can incorporate it into business and all that. So
that's awesome, man.
Dennis, I think I saw you tweet out something about going down to El Salvador here recently, or is my memory incorrect?
No, yeah, I'm going to go down. I've been planning to go down for some time, for a long time, actually, especially even longer than most people because my parents live down there and I just have never gone down to visit. They've been down there for 7 years doing mission work in San Salvador area. It's about 45 minutes away from Bitcoin Beach. And I never went to visit, partly because we just had a kind of like a falling out when I left the church, like when I was a little younger, and I haven't gone down to. I used to be on the mission field as a kid, like in Juarez, Mexico. I lived there for 3 years. But when I found out what was going down there, my dad was like, "Dude, there's this Bitcoiner down here. He's doing some interesting stuff. He's really into Bitcoin." And I was like, whatever, dude, like there's a ton of people that are into Bitcoin. He did not explain it to me at all what was going on. He was just like, yeah, he likes Bitcoin. He's cool with it.
Was the guy like Mike from Bitcoin Beach?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they were friends with Mike Peterson for like years and didn't tell me what he was doing. And I'm just like, all of a sudden, I'm about to get on a phone call with Mike and I see Jack Mallers has been visiting down there and Peter McCormick is visiting. I'm like, this cannot be the same guy. And lo and behold, news articles start coming out and it's the same freaking guy. And I'm just like, I can't believe like my dad didn't tell me about this sooner. And so things just keep rolling and rolling. And like the phone call, actually, we ended up not being able to get on the phone call. And then I was really like antsy to get on set it back up with him. And then now I've just been trying to go down and visit ever since then. So it's kind of funny because my parents are like, I'm sure they're a little irked, but at the same time, like, I'm going to go finally rebuild my relationship with my parents and visit them because of Bitcoin. So people say that Bitcoin isn't good for society. In my personal relationship with my parents is like we talk all the time now. It's really funny because of Bitcoin.
I'm in an argument. I woke up in an argument this morning on Twitter already, and I hate waking up that way. So this guy,
it's not even 11 a.m.
Dude, I was pissed. I was like, my kid was crying. Like, I was like, okay, I wasn't mad at that. I'm like, all right, he wants to come hang out with us in bed, whatever. So I was like, okay, I like grab him. I'm happy. I turn over, I look at my phone, and this guy's trying to tell me that Bitcoin like ushers in neo-feudalism. And I'm like, God fucking damn it, not this bullshit. Actually, I have the thread pulled up here. I'm gonna pull it up because I'm
gonna go to the dark ages, dude. We're all just gonna be living with our Bitcoin lords over us.
Right.
And then we're all just going to be a bunch of like plebs, like living like peasants.
So this guy started it all. And this goes back to like, this goes back to me saying we have like a group where she's pretty well versed and stuff, but she doesn't really like engaging in this.
Oh, I see her a lot on Spaces.
Mm-hmm. Someone was trying to tell her to switch her name to Bitcoin Mom. And I was like, you can't do that. Like Jack Mahler's mom already has that designation. There can only be one.
Yeah.
But anyway, and this is such an old thread too. You see this was like at the beginning of the month, and like I thought this was done and over with.
Oh,
I was
no,
like,
someone come in.
Last I checked, there's no gray area when it comes to decentralization, because he was trying to say must be nice viewing it all black and white, and I'm like, dude, shut up. And so this guy comes in, he's like a fraction of 1% own like 80% of all Bitcoin.
Is that true?
No, it's not true. I gave him, let's see here. I replied twice. I should have replied under the same thread. I was just like false. And I attached an article. And then said something. I was just like, a cap supply forces holders to spend, especially as like volatility continues to decrease and more merchants begin to accept Bitcoin as payment. Like right now, we're in the store of value phase. We're not like in the currency of phase. I know like El Salvador is like leapfrog that a little bit, but I was just like, dude, you're thinking from like a perspective of like now, like Bitcoin is not the standard now. Like, unfortunately it's not. And so I told him, he was like, okay, so the cap of Bitcoin's what made it so expensive. This drove investment, now blind faith. Bitcoin's cap places an end date on its ability to function. Not good for sound money. This is obvious. Learn about what you support. It's hollow. And when he said that, I was like, oh, dude, you're in. Like, instantly, I was like, come on, let's debate on Twitter Spaces. Like, fuck this thread.
Yo, so who originally picked this thread back up? Like
this guy, Liminal 4D, like picked it up out of nowhere. Okay. And I was just like, you realize Bitcoin's infinitely divisible, right? Like Bitcoin's end cap doesn't place an end date on its ability to function. And then I was like, with how fast you replied, you obviously didn't read the article. Therefore, I was like, you really aren't going to like be open to like changing your mind. Essentially.
He's also anonymous. So like he can just say whatever.
I know.
Arguing with those anon people is a little different.
It's just annoying. But long story short, like he gets down into, you realize that there's inflation in Bitcoin right now, and that's why it's functioning right. More coins being mined is fundamental. Also, the visibility of Bitcoin is a form of inflation. And then he's like, I'm on desktop, yada, yada, but I'd be happy to debate on Spaces in the future. A.k.a. he's not going to debate, like deflecting on that. Actually, I'm curious if he really is.
That's so stupid because we already know there's 21 million Bitcoin, so it doesn't matter that there's only 18 million right now because we know how many there's going to be.
So, all right. I want to know what I want to know. I'm asking you guys your opinion on this. Long story short was like, am I approaching this the right way? Because I feel like this is a problem with Bitcoiners right now is that we come off all hot headed and stuff. And it drives away kind of people from seeing like our point of view on things. So I said coins being mined at a step rate with a supply having every 4 years approximately. I was like, as demand increases, supply increases. I don't believe you can say that's inflationary. I can subdivide $1 into 100 cents, but that's not inflation either. Inflation is the devaluation of time.
Yeah, people get really trapped on the they think that divisibility and and creation of more actual like fiat or Bitcoin is like the same thing. They think that it's like they equate them. I have a hard time also like explaining that to people. I'm not sure why there's such a disconnect there. But typically the example that I give is when a lot of people do is like talking about like a pizza pie or talking about like any sort of circular piece of food that you can cut into pieces. And then you say, well, I have a pie here and I could cut the pie in 4 pieces. I could cut it in 10 pieces. I could cut it in 20 pieces, but it's still just one pie. And each slice is a fraction of that one pie. But what you're doing when you print more money, you're actually creating more pies and you're devaluing the value. Some people get tripped up on that one too. So I'm trying to come up with like a new framework for it. But yeah, I don't know why people always have a problem with understanding that divisibility and creation of new money are totally separate things.
Yeah,
you're like going different
infinite
directions.
Divisibility doesn't
change
the capital supply at all.
No,
it just makes it more functional as a medium of exchange and unit of account in the future state.
I think some noobs also they think like when you buy Bitcoin from an exchange, you're like just buying it out of nothing, and they don't realize that Bitcoin has already been mined and it's like already in the system when you buy it from an exchange.
I struggled with that too. Yeah. So when my friends would ask me like, if there's no more of these, Bitcoins that are coming out, it's like, how are people going to continue to trade them and buy them and things like that? It's like, well, there's new coins in circulation versus, ones that are already out there on exchanges. So, and not everything is like a one coin to one coin type of exchange, but just educating yourself on the way it works.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and this guy's trying to say that like Bitcoin's creating a worse wealth gap. And like what I struggle on conveying is like our wealth gap right now it's the problem of the middle class being able to outpace inflation right now. Like the people at the top, like who are closest to like all the wealth in the money printer, like they can continuously get new wealth in, and then it doesn't trickle down, I mean, but like prices are increasing. Like, so like the price of food and gas and just like basic human needs takes out a larger chunk of percentage for your average person than it does for someone super wealthy. So somebody making $40,000 a year, like gas and food and like rent and all that takes a huge percentage of like your income out of like what you're making every year versus somebody who's making like $100,000 a year and so on and so forth. So like people who have a ton of money like can just invest and outpace inflation way better than someone who's not making a ton of money. But I don't think where people get caught up on like Bitcoin is like, okay, it's deflationary. So naturally, if you just hold on to it and save your money, like your buying power is going to increase over time. And what you're going to see is like the cost of goods and services, rather than increase every year, it's going to decrease every year. And like, yeah, there's going to be people at the top that just have an absurd amount of wealth. There's always going to be. Like Bitcoin's not creating a communist or socialist utopia. That's not what it's out there to do. And I think that's what some people think we're trying to say sometimes.
What's the
argument? A lot of people think that Bitcoin is like that. Bitcoiners think that Bitcoin is like the absolute perfect money. And I was like, I don't know that a perfect money is something that's realistic, but it's just like progress over perfection. I think it's just like we contend that it's much progress over the existing system.
If we're on a Bitcoin standard, and like, to me, I mean, obviously that would be great, but like the incentive there is to not spend your Bitcoin because it's deflationary. So could, in theory, like there be an argument that like people aren't going to spend it and there's going to be less economic activity because nobody's going to want to spend their money? And what's the counter argument to that?
So I just wanted to like jump in on one of the things that I think is really important to bring up when people try to say that Bitcoin like centralizes wealth, just because you can look and you can see we're very fortunate to have just endless amounts of metrics on Bitcoin. And there's a trend in the Bitcoin world where wealth becomes more distributed over time. And that trend has never broken in the entire existence of Bitcoin. So it's become more and more decentralized over time. And if you compare that to the current system that we have, it's the opposite. The trend is that wealth becomes more centralized over time. And that's a big problem. Obviously, everyone talks about that. And the current system incentivizes hoarding. Obviously, there's a level of hoarding going on in the Bitcoin space because of the opportunity costs and people don't want to spend it. But you're still, despite the fact that people want to get as much of this as possible and keep it and hold on to it and not really spend it to a certain degree, you still see a trend where it's becoming more decentralized and there's more holders and more wealth distribution. So it's really just people can talk about it theoretically and be like, well, it's going to cause this, it's going to cause that. But like, well, let's look at the actual data, and the trend shows us that you're wrong. And you're saying that a 12-year, 13-year trend is going to just break when really that trend is becoming more accelerated. So it's just a stupid argument for that people to even make.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense because like all the people mining at the beginning, I mean, they probably had thousands of
Exactly.
coins, but there's no way all of them still have all those coins.
Those people sold those coins, and like what other alternative would be preferred? Like I can't really see how we could have designed a fairer system. Like anybody could have joined the network at any time, and like like if you were a cryptographer and you were on the mailing list, you knew about it before people like us knew about it. But like anybody's free to join the network at any time. Anyone can buy Bitcoin off an exchange at any time. So it's like the idea that everyone buys Bitcoin at the price that they deserve. That's kind of like a trite way of saying it, but that is the idea. And there's going to be a disparity of wealth in any system, but at least in a Bitcoin system, like if you want something, eventually, if it was, years from now, like if you want something, you need to exchange Bitcoin for it. Whereas now, like the people that are positioned closest to the money printer have this advantage. So like there's going to be wealth distribution in any system. It's just a question of fairness. Like the other day I tweeted like fairness over equality. Like we shouldn't be shooting for equality. Yeah, we should be shooting for fairness, because like if we have a fair system, look, there's 5 of us here. Like Dennis is probably going to produce more than me, and so he should have more.
I appreciate your faith in me.
Yeah, I'm just using you as an example, motherfucker. I don't really think that. So that was rude. So like in a fair system, he should have more wealth than I do. Like we shouldn't be shooting for equality. We should be shooting for fairness. And then the harder you work, the luckier you get, the more people that that determines kind of your outcome.
Yeah, if you produce the most value, you should in return receive the most value for you.
Right. And so like the point that he was making about inflation is ridiculous. Like inflation isn't actually the issue. It's the fact that we don't know what inflation is going to be in the future. And there's a small group of people who make those decisions. So like Bitcoin's inflation rate is arbitrary. It can be whatever it is. It's the fact that it's programmatic that makes it special. Like the programmatic piece is the piece that's important. So like that he was making like each of those tweets was 3 different points that are pretty easy to rebut.
He added another point here just recently too. He's going hard at it right now, real time.
Tell him to fucking join. Like it's simple as that. Here, like to drop the link and say, "Hey, we're talking about this. Join."
Yeah,
like that's also the thing is like Twitter is the worst format for an argument, and we all get fucking baited into arguing on Twitter. Like,
dude, I hope this guy joins. That'd be fun.
I think a lot of
this is awesome,
that,
dude.
Like
he said, he's on desktop, so there's no excuse,
Come talk about it on the Zoom call. Yeah, exactly.
But like you guys were all in Miami, like you see that, like people, like the way that they act on the internet is one way, and then when you meet someone in person, it's a completely different thing. So like Twitter is also just a horrible. I mean, it's the best thing we have, but it's like a horrible venue for these.
I only met one shitcoiner in Miami, and he was super like not how they are on the internet. He was just real passive. He was like trying to slip it in. He had no confidence in what he was saying about it at all.
Yeah, Kenny's right. It's like the worst place to debate, but yet it's probably one of the main places that we have been debating for a long time, because you can always, when given enough time and opportunity, you can always, reword and rewrite over and over again until you come up with something that seems somewhat cognizant as an argument, but it's it's really difficult to actually win people over on Twitter. Personally, with me though, like when 2017, when everyone was like keyboard warring over big blocks versus small blocks, I was on Reddit, like reading the arguments back and forth. And that's what really like galvanized me to be like, to become a maximalist and to understand the direction that this whole project was heading. Cause I was able to see the back and forth, and Bitcoiners always had, small blockers, especially, always had the best arguments. So I wouldn't say that it's like a total waste, because sometimes there are, people that are reading your comments and they're being exposed to what you're saying. So you may not be convincing that person in the moment, that one that you're actually debating with, but oftentimes there are other people that are like watching and lurking and might come across what you're saying. And, don't feel like you have to argue with these people, but just realize there are people out there that are, kind of anons that don't engage with the content and they don't engage with the commentary, but they're smart and they're reading and they're listening and they're picking up on what you're saying. So just realize that there's probably somebody that you've positively impacted by some of the writing that you've done, even if it feels like you're just screaming into the air.
Yeah, I feel like Twitter's a great place to share ideas, even if it's not the best place, like the ideal forum for a debate. So,
right.
we take some and we lose some.
That's why I'm so glad Spaces is a thing now, though. Like
Yeah.
I originally, like Dennis, I was like in agreement with you. I'm like, okay, I'm not arguing with this person. I'm just trying to show my side. So whoever reads through this thread, hopefully I'm conveying my point across better than the opposing party. But now with like Spaces, I'm just like, hey, we can go back and forth all day. Let's solve this in 15 minutes. Come debate. I'll open up a Spaces room and just debate you. And like, everybody's like, all these guys instantly are like, no, I'm good. They'll come up with some excuse. I'm on Twitter for desktop. I can't. Well, did you know actually Spaces works on desktop now?
Yeah, that does. Yeah.
And also, is your phone not right next to your desktop?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. I'm like, seriously?
Yeah, do you not have your cell phone, Kenny? Yeah, exactly.
Where do you
Everybody's like attached to their cell phone permanently. Yeah. They might as well just fucking sew it onto our arm.
It's literally so like if I have it near me, I'm gonna look at it. Like if the screen lights up, I'm gonna look at it.
Look, it's like right here.
Yeah, we've all got it within less than an arm's reach.
Which is why there's no excuse to not buy Bitcoin, because all you need is a phone.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why I really love what they're doing in El Salvador. That's crazy with this new app they're developing, that you can actually, you don't even have to have cell phone service. You don't even have to have a plan, and they will allow you to use data for free to use this Bitcoin wallet.
Is it like a government wallet though? Because that's kind of
it is.
So
it's all interoperable, so you can use any wallet.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that like if you want to get the $30 in Bitcoin airdrop, and I think I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure about this. Like, so with the government wallet, you can use it anywhere that there's cellular service, even if you don't have a cellular plan. Where like that isn't true with the other wallet. So like there are benefits for it, but there's obviously also trade-offs.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome because like the president had mentioned that was. Alan showing on the screen. I appreciate you pulling this up here.
Yeah, I got to plug your Substack, man. We're all trying to change things for the better here. So
I appreciate you, brother.
For those just listening, I have Nick's Substack up here. Why We Bitcoin? That's the name.
Yep, that was honestly the hardest part for me. I had like 3 articles written, a 4th one kind of in the works right now, and I was like, I can't put this out here until I think of a name, and it just. I don't know, it just hit me. So, but anyway, like the president had mentioned in this Twitter space that I referred, like that was just, and Alan, you were in there, we were DMing. It was just the coolest thing having him in there and him mentioning that cell phone penetration is really high, but smartphone penetration isn't. And so my initial thought was okay, that's a huge, and it still is. But with the government wallet being able to being accessed through, data, to be that like, at least for now, kind of serves as a bridge.
Dude, is this him?
One of those hurdles.
Is this the guy?
Is he in here?
Wait.
Do you know this person?
Let's go.
That would be so funny.
Wait.
I don't know.
Do we know?
No, I don't think so. He spells his name with a K.
Oh yeah.
Yo, what's up?
Hey, how you doing?
What's up, man?
Well, great. I just doxed myself. Awesome.
Oh shit. Well,
just your first name.
You don't have to show your face. That's fine.
All right. Well, now if anybody wants to.
All right, Alan and Go at it.
We'll just do that. That's the guy that's been
Hey,
warring with you guys on Twitter.
damn, you joined,
I
dude.
don't
That's
like
savage.
saying I don't like saying war, man. I respect you for coming on.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I'm
Alan,
surprised you joined.
Alan, maybe pull up the thread so you guys can kind of go through it in an
Yeah,
organized way.
we can pull it back up here. Liminal, I see you're an artist, by the way. So I'm gonna, because you came on here and are willing to debate, I'm gonna go ahead and plug your artistry for you too on here. Not that a million people are gonna see it, but I respect it. So
I appreciate it.
So we'll go back to the thread here. So essentially, Liminal, correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially what we were going through on here was that you're of the position that Bitcoin's deflationary value is going to conglomerate wealth into a select few, and that'll create this neo-feudalistic type society. I'm of the position that I disagree with that stance. And I believe over time, Bitcoin will become more and more, the supply will become more and more dispersed. And that I also made the point that just because the supply is in the hands of a few right now doesn't mean that Bitcoin itself is not decentralized.
So all of my points are built around, well, first of all, let me say this. I'm not anti-Bitcoin. I'm glad that it's here. I think it's the granddaddy, it's the grandfather. So it has to, that respect should always be in place. My criticisms and everything that I've said on here has to do with the maximalist view of Bitcoin and the takes that I keep hearing from them. I think that that take is what is very, very unhealthy for crypto in general, for all the reasons that I was citing. And then we can get into each one of those. So my contention is with maximalists to say only Bitcoin, no other cryptocurrency, and especially this idea that Bitcoin solves everything. To me, that's absurd.
So, okay. So I want to break that down a little bit more because I don't want to assume talking points here. I take it that you're in favor, because originally this thread was talking about the perceived notion of DeFi and what some of these tokens are bringing to quote unquote DeFi. You believe there's some use cases for things like Ethereum, things like Uniswap, things like Cardano, Polkadot, etc.
Oh, and let's really set this thing on fire. I'm a big proponent of Doge. So.
Oh man,
bro, that's cap. You're not.
Okay. I want to. Okay. All right. Let's start with that. Why? What is the what is in your mind? What is the use case of Doge, and why are you such a proponent of it? Why is this good? Why is this a good system or a good replacement for our current system?
Well, okay, I don't think it should be a replacement for our system. I think it should be a strong competitor. And why I like Doge is the circulation supply. 130 billion coins is often seen as a bad thing. But if you're talking being used as money, that large circulation supply is actually just about right on point with what you want to see in a currency at our current, amount of people on the planet. Now that and that's actually not even enough if it was the only currency, which is why I don't think you want it to be the only currency. You want it to be a competitor to these government-run fiat systems. So that's one point. The second point, or go ahead.
I was just going to say, so my rebuttal to that first point, and I'll let you go on to your second, is that Bitcoin unit bias is real. A lot of people get hung up on the idea that there's 21 million Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. What's not touted enough around is that there's 400 quadrillion Satoshis.
That's a whole other great thing we can talk about too. Well, I guess we could just go there now. So if you make the argument to push Satoshis as the currency and not Bitcoin, you frame it as in Satoshis, right? But Satoshis is like, what is it, a factor of 8 or 9? It's 0.00.
There's 100 million Satoshis in each Bitcoin. right? So, but these are really just terms. Like on the Bitcoin blockchain, like there really is no such thing as a Bitcoin or like it's just all unspent transaction outputs, right? So like it's just, it doesn't really matter how you discuss it. Like it's either a Bitcoin is 100 million units of a Satoshi. So like it doesn't really matter what you call it, right?
Yeah, but that relationship of how many Satoshis equal one Bitcoin does matter, because for a Satoshi to be valuable enough for it to be, say, one Satoshi is equal to $1, what that means for how much a Bitcoin is worth, that just runs it through the roof. And then, like I said, you go back to the distributions of who owns Bitcoin and the amount of people that do compared to the amount of people in the world. You're creating a very, very, very small portion of people in the world that will have a massive amount of Bitcoin. So they will, and like I say, this is where I pin it to my argument is against maximalists who say that Bitcoin is the only currency. There are no other cryptos, and it's the currency of the future. It's like, okay, let's run that game.
Okay, well, I think the reason that people say that is just because pretty much anything out there is, if not an outright scam, it's very close to a scam, right? Where
there are tons of scams.
It's something that's highly centralized, and the goal of the project is to take the Bitcoin really of unwilling folks that don't know what they're doing.
So, and I agree with that point. There's too many scams out there, and that's the biggest argument against my desire to see more competition in the market. It's the Wild West right now, and unfortunately, a majority of altcoins are shit coins that are taking advantage and stealing people's money, and it's just not okay. A lot of tokens, especially, but just for argument's sake, if we focus on, like I was saying, say the Satoshi becomes, because we need to run these things out at least to the best capacity that we can, and say, okay, a Satoshi becomes valuable enough to be used as, an equivalent to $1 or even 50 cents or something. So it makes sense. Well, then Bitcoin becomes, and what are the numbers off the top of my head? Is it $1 million a coin at that point for Bitcoin? It's something really high.
I don't think that like one Satoshi needs to, I don't think of like one Satoshi as $1 or like one quarter or something. I just don't think that's like the right way to think about it. Like,
well, then in that case,
we would just be like, you'd just be repricing things. Like the units just would be different in our minds and the way we think about it. And so like having Satoshis in circulation isn't like, being able to divide Bitcoin doesn't make it any more inflationary. Like you're not ultimately increasing the capital supply by just making it easier to move around and attacking that unit bias that Alan was talking about.
Well, to finish my point too, and then we go to that too, is to say, okay, so if a Satoshi has to become valuable enough to be used as a currency that makes sense, then at that point the distributions within Bitcoin are clearly weighted. There's a small amount of people that own a lot of it. We can argue that point too. But if you're talking about, again, the maxi discussion that the entire world is going to be Bitcoin, how does that fare to most people? That means a super minority of people are going to have own and hold a majority of the wealth of the world. That makes no sense. It makes no sense. And so that maxi idea, to me, maximalism exists because rich people want to limit their risk. And the best way to do that is to knock out your competition. You want everybody buying Bitcoin because the way Bitcoin is set up, it's built to be hoarded. It's built to inflate the price because there isn't a lot of it.
For now.
And so that's what's encouraging maximalists to adopt this attitude, because they're protecting their wealth. And that to me it's not healthy. It doesn't fit the future of cryptocurrency. In my mind, Bitcoin should be saying, yeah, we're first in, we're best dressed, we're the granddaddy, the respect will always be paid, it's the Godfather, but let's be honest about what it can and can't do. And what other tech industry is the first thing that comes out just treated as the only answer? There is no innovation past this.
Except for the internet. There's only one internet, and there's only going to be one internet of money. Why don't need multiple? The only reason we've needed multiple forms of money in the past is because there were inherent problems in those forms of money. I mean, the common argument for people that are trying to say that we need Doge is we need some sort of like checking versus savings. But the only reason we've ever needed multi-coins in the past was because of the fact that, for instance, like if you go all the way back to and you look through history, you have the gold florin in like the 1500s, and it spanned for hundreds of years actually as the sound money. It was probably the most sound money that we ever had. And the problem was that it was so valuable that nobody wanted to spend it. And it became so valuable that it was impossible to use for daily transactions. You couldn't divide it, right? It was a coin. Nobody wanted to cut their coins in half, although there was coin clipping that has occurred throughout history. Typically, people did not do that with these. And the average person, it was like a whole month's salary for them. So it was impossible for them to acquire them oftentimes and impossible for them to use for daily transactions. So what ended up happening is there were cheaper coins, silver coins that were created in order to be used for daily transactions because they were highly divisible and very low value. We don't need to do that with Bitcoin because Bitcoin is theoretically infinitely divisible. If we ever need or have an issue with the ability to spend it on daily transactions, like let's say it goes to a $1 per sat, well, we'll probably add zeros on, or you can even look today, like for instance, with the Lightning Network, you're actually able to deal in fractions of sats. So we don't need Dogecoin to act as some sort of like second tier money because of the fact that Bitcoin, we can adjust the code. It's programmable money. We can adjust the code to however many zeros we need on the end to make it more and more divisible. So the argument that Doge will serve some sort of purpose as like people's checking account is just doesn't align with history. It doesn't align with the way money has worked and the way that we've perceived how we can make money more divisible for people to be able to spend on daily transactions.
So to go back to your internet comparison with Bitcoin, the internet has problems too, and that's evolving as well. And you could go into the reasons why that we have a lot of problems with.
But it's a singular internet.
Yeah, it's also, but it's not to compare the internet with money and the way the economy works. I think that's a pretty big reach.
No,
it's not a big reach because it's one network. Yeah. There's one network. There's one network for the internet, and there's one network for internet of money. There's a lot of problems with the internet, and actually, we learned a lot of lessons from the development and the deployment of the internet that we really can't take back. And maybe one day, because of improvements in things like being able to control the money supply with Bitcoin, or I would say the opposite. I'm almost like taking away the control of the money because you really can't create a new system unless you have a money that can't be fucked with. Otherwise, they'll just turn the faucet off. So, but when it comes to the deployment of the internet, it was a mess. We didn't know what we were doing. It was the first like open network we've ever created, and inevitably there were some security problems and some privacy issues. But at the same time, we learned a lot of lessons from that. And that's why I think so many people, specifically what you call maximalism, the reason that we are so ardent in our beliefs and why we are so entrenched is because we've learned the lessons from what happens when you bend the knee and when you decide to cave in your principles and you see the world and the way it develops. If we would have been stronger, and there's many people that were around during the time of the internet development that make this case, if we would have been more stickler on the privacy problems and the security issues that were inherent in the internet, then we wouldn't have those problems today. But people were willing to say, oh, maybe we don't know what we're talking about because there was no history to go off of. We didn't understand what was going to be the implications of what was about to happen. Yes, but now we can see the implications of what happens when you decide to say, oh, you know what? It's okay. Let's be nice. Let's not be so toxic. Let's not be maximalist. Like, you end up with shit. You end up with problems. And when you're talking about global money, we can't have any mistakes. And that's why we're so firm in our beliefs.
So if the first people that got access to the internet were given a larger distribution of when they were allowed to get on the internet and what sections of the internet they were given access to, then I think you would have a good correlation with Bitcoin. The people that were early adopters, and you could argue that it's maybe still early to be in Bitcoin, but if you're in early, the rewards are yours. which is incentivizing people to be maximalists. The internet does not work that way. Now, portions
That's
of
not
it
true.
do.
People who
Portions of
adopted
it
the
do,
internet earlier
and
on
I would argue
benefited the
that
most
I would argue
dramatically.
And I would argue that if there were more competition for the internet, we would be in a better place, because right now we have social media systems colluding. And regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, which is where this could get really hot, but when you have people's voices being silenced, and then there's conversations about censorship now, and that being correlated with protecting people, and it's just a whole messy thing. But what you can see is a collusion of major organizations, from Twitter to Facebook, and they're monopolizing spaces that I don't think they have a right to do. And these are problems that are way bigger than anything I can say to have a solution for. But I would say that if you want to
agree with that, but that can't happen with Bitcoin.
It is happening with Bitcoin because the distributions.
If distributions trickling out over the last 12 years, you can.
I've been watching the market cap. No, the consolidation is strengthening. We went from 80% consolidation under, like, what was it, 0.5%, to now it's up to 84% over this last dip. The people with money are buying up the Bitcoin.
So Liminal, I think where you're getting caught up on is the evolution of how a currency evolves. We're in the store of value stage. We're not in the currency stage. You can make the argument that no, El Salvador has leapfrogged the stages of money, but the main three evolutions is store of value, medium of exchange, and then unit of account. We're still in the store value period. So there's a lot of risk that's involved right now getting into Bitcoin. I mean, most Bitcoiners who are in it, who are Bitcoin maximalists, believe that it's gonna be eventually down the road, with a high enough time preference, that Bitcoin is going to be the standard of the world. And when we're at that point, a lot of things are going to be happening. So one, the volatility of the price of Bitcoin is going to be stabilized out. So we're not going to see these crazy price swings. Two, at that point, any big whale that's in existence that hasn't already sold money, which I highly doubt by the time we get to that point, because I mean, you got to have true, what we've memed into existence, diamond hands, of not falling prey to the incentive of selling off that Bitcoin. But eventually, like, it doesn't matter how rich you are. That wealth doesn't matter if you don't spend it onto something, and this is where we get into what we were talking about, inflation versus deflation. Like, one Bitcoin is going to always be one Bitcoin, no matter how many times you subdivide it. And Dennis had a great example with a pie. You can have one pie subdivided an infinite amount of times. It's still the same amount of pie. If you create another pie, though, now you have more pie. So the point I'm getting at is that, like, the amount of Bitcoin, the unit bias that people get caught up on with, like, there's only 21 million, there's an X amount in some whales' pockets. Like, yeah, these are all hurdles that need to be overcome and will be overcome based off of how Bitcoin is structured. So Bitcoin's not out to create a communist socialist utopia. Like, the people who are in first are going to be rewarded for taking on said risk. But once things have played out, and if things play out the game theory that a lot of us believe in, like, there might be a few people at the top, but overall, in order for the economy to work, Bitcoin's going to have to be spent.
Well, I hope you're right. And I just disagree. I don't think that the distributions will magically go away.
So let me maybe ask this question then. What is a better alternative, if you can, like, spell that out so we understand?
Yeah, so I think I think I mentioned this in one of the tweets. The biggest issue that we're running up against is something that I don't know how any of us can solve, but it's good that we talk about it. And that's wrapped up in that Pareto principle, right? The Pareto distribution. It's something that seems to be found in nature. In art, artists are big fans of it. It's the 80-20 rule. It's breaking up, and it's not having a completely even distribution. And for some reason, this simulation, or this world that we live in, is a big fan of that. So whether it's capitalism or whatever ism you want, there are consolidations of wealth that take place. How do you defeat that? Now, a lot of people
I think it's just a result.
Here's the thing.
People are
hold on.
different.
Here's the
like,
thing,
not
Liminal.
everyone's going to be able to succeed.
Hold on. I don't understand that you keep saying this, making this comparison that Bitcoin is similar to the current system, because I agree with you. The current system of fiat and most systems, there is a problem with, over time, there's a trend that they become more centralized in their supply and their hoarding. But that is not true with Bitcoin. If you look at Bitcoin from the beginning of its history to now, it has become more and more distributed over time. You may be looking at a small section, and you may also be looking at data that is skewed because of the fact that a lot of the Bitcoin that you're talking about, maybe when you're saying 80 to 84% is centralized, that's because it's being held on exchanges, and but the people that actually own that Bitcoin is highly decentralized. So trying to say that Bitcoin is becoming more centralized in its supply control over time is not true. Over time, it's become more and more decentralized.
So that statement cannot be proven. So that's not true.
It can be proven.
And also,
look at the very beginning of Bitcoin when there was very few people actually using it. Now look at today; there are millions of people using it. So how can you argue that the trend has been set and it has continued over time from the beginning of Bitcoin?
The only proof we have in the numbers, now we can argue what those numbers mean, but the only proof is that the numbers are consolidating towards a smaller percentage owning a massive majority. Now we can break down those distributions and qualify them, what those addresses mean, because there are 3 types of different addresses. Now that includes exchanges. Yes, I'm not arguing against that. These are all facts, but we can see over this last dip that it went from 80% to 84% being in the 1% of addresses. Now, those might be exchanges, but to make it a factual statement that it is distributing to more people, we don't know that. We don't see that, and you can't make that point in good faith, in my opinion.
You can. You don't. You just have to look at how many people are on the network and how many wallets there are. Like, just look at the beginning of time. Look at the beginning of time. There's very few people using Bitcoin. And today there are millions of people using Bitcoin, and it's become much more decentralized. In the beginning, it was just Satoshi mining Bitcoin, and he had millions of Bitcoin. Now there are millions of new users and wallets on the network. There are thousands of whales on the network that have distributed the supply. So I don't know how you could even possibly make the argument that it's becoming more decentralized or more centralized over time.
I want to make one
I can't
point
let you jump
quick.
in. No, you can't right there, because I need to address what you just said, because that's disingenuous. Quantity of people using a system does not equal percentage distribution, period.
So then what's your rebuttal for Dogecoin? 60 to 70% of the entire Dogecoin supply being in 2 wallets.
I'd like to answer that, but you guys keep moving the mark on target.
No, you can stay on this topic of what we're talking about.
No, I'm trying to stay on each topic, but we keep jumping to them before I can even address the point. I was trying to lay the foundation for the Pareto principle and why these distribution issues are not to blame on Bitcoin. This is something that we seem to battle in lots of conditions. And you were trying to say, what was the solution? And I'm saying, because go back to that original question, I don't know the answer to that. This stuff is way bigger than me. I'm just a digital
We do know
artist.
the answer, though.
But what I would say,
we do know the answer.
Well, let me tell you my opinion. My opinion is that you need competition. Competition seems to be one of the bulwarks throughout history to creating incentive for new people, because we live over time. People are born and die, and we need something
for money,
young.
though.
Yes, for money. That's why we have inflation and currency, because you have to have it circulating. New people have to get access to it through means of production and doing things.
You're jumping into like a totally different area now, but we do know the answer. The answer is have a hard supply cap so that the number will go up. Once the number goes up efficiently, people are forced to spend it, and there's no way to just get new Bitcoin, right?
Who's been forced to spend Bitcoin? That's a fundamentally wrong sentiment. Having a hard
cap as the number goes up. If you play the game theory out, which is a very rational way to discuss an argument. If you play game theory out, as the number goes up, people are going to be incentivized to spend it, as Alan was discussing earlier. And that has been proven to be true. You see big whales spending their coins. You can see it all over Glassnode. You can see it. There's all sorts of data out there that proves that big players are. Yeah. And of course, people are in this phase right now where they're trying to accumulate more. But as I said, Bitcoin has become more decentralized in its supply over time. You cannot argue that, because there has been very extremely centralized control over the supply. And now you have a giant group of people that are controlling the supply. Like it's, I don't even see how you could possibly make the argument that it's become more centralized as time has gone on. It's an impossible argument to make.
No, it is a very possible one because, and let's stay right there, what you call a giant group owning majorities of Bitcoin while simultaneously saying that Bitcoin needs to be the world currency, the proportion of the amount of people that own Bitcoin now, not even owning majorities, just fractions compared to the world population that you would like Bitcoin to be the one world currency of, it's minuscule. The amount of people that own majorities of Bitcoin now, you can argue that they're all on exchanges, fine. Doesn't matter. If you want this to be the world currency, all the people that will come on board later, what are they going to get? Satoshis? And so what does that do to the distribution curve of the amount of people that are owning the majority of the wealth? It's massively top-ended.
I mean, I just think you really need to go look at like even with skewed numbers of wallets that are owned by exchanges, like if you go look at BitInfo charts, or if you go look at any of the Bitcoin rich lists, which is all data that's pulled from the actual blockchain, you can see the distribution of Bitcoin, and you can see that it's become more decentralized over time. You can see that it's become more spread out.
So what you just said is actually the opposite. BitInfo charts, if you go look at, because I screenshot them, kept them over time, we went from 80% of Bitcoin being held by less than 1% of the wallets to, over this last dip, it's now up to like 84 or 86. It's gone the opposite way. It's
you can't just look at one point in time. Like that's
what time frame are you looking at, dude?
I've been like I'll say it again. I've been screenshotting this over time and watching the distributions.
How much time?
Why are you? What if okay?
Because you're not zooming out enough, dude. You're like looking at a screenshot of time. Oh, of course, there are going to be periods where you see more accumulation and more centralization. But it's the same thing with Bitcoin's price. There's been periods where it's been way down, and then there's periods where it's way up. But over time, when you actually widen out the zoom, the lens, over time, Bitcoin becomes more decentralized. So you're saying, yeah, sure.
So can you show that to me? Show that to me. Show me that Bitcoin is becoming more decentralized over time. You can't just say it. You
need to look at the numbers, dude. They're right there.
You can't just say you can look at the numbers, because I'm telling you, I'm looking at the numbers.
That's what you're saying. Yeah, but you're looking at it. You can't even admit to how short of a period that you've been screenshotting it, because you know that it's not been a very long period.
No,
that's why you're not unwilling to answer the question.
I'm not unwilling to answer the question. I'm trying to address these point by point. From January until June, we've seen a consolidation from 80% to like 84%. That is moving towards more centralized. Now we can argue what those distributions are. Again,
6 months, exchanges. Dude. It's 5 months. That's what you're looking at. That's an incredibly short amount of time.
So, but you're not providing your facts. So let's zoom out and take a larger swath. You can't just say, "Oh, the numbers support it." Show me that, because I don't see that.
Dude, you just need to go look at the beginning of when Bitcoin was in existence. For the first year, there was like hardly anybody using it, which is a very small amount of people, extremely centralized.
So I'm going to say this to you again.
And then you're going to now where you have let's see, 50,
the amount 20, of people using 30, 40, something 50. Does not equal the distributions. You can have 1 million people using it, but if 800,000 of those are have a fraction of it.
Let me ask you a question. You have Satoshi and maybe Hal Finney and a few other people who control millions of coins. Do you know a single person on this planet, one person who controls millions of coins now, besides for Satoshi's wallet that's dead and dormant?
So let's just look at this.
While other people don't have any coins at all. Like that's why I'm saying it's a crazy argument to make, dude. Because
this is
I know you're saying users, like I get the point you're trying to make with the users, but at the same time,
this is a completely logical. Just look at these distributions, and let's not even look at the distributions. In fact, let's just look at how many wallets exist, how many people are in crypto right now, and say that we want this Bitcoin to be the world's currency. Like I'm saying, let's run this out.
As more people are
we have run the numbers.
More wallets increase, the distribution of Bitcoin increases. And honestly, it doesn't matter if a ton of Bitcoin's conglomerated in one wallet, because what decentralizes the network is the node operators.
That's not. So let's answer that right there, because you said as more people get in, we'll get more people with wallets, and that will somehow magically like create distribution. But the way Bitcoin is set up is, and the reason why people like it is because
we're in a store of value phase right now, and people want to hodl their Bitcoin. That's totally fine. That's totally fine.
Let me finish this point, please, because this gets to some of the crux of our disagreement here. Yes, the way Bitcoin functions, you want it to increase in value, so you're building wealth for more people, which is why you want more people on board. But as that price increases, the amount a person can buy is fractional compared to what they could have if they bought in earlier. Now, this is not an absurd statement. This is the way it's working.
That's how risk plays out.
Right.
Risk versus reward.
So yes.
So are you suggesting that we should have a money down value over time then? So like
no, I'd like you to listen to me to get to a point before we move on to another topic.
Okay, let's finish.
So you get you get these massive you get the Pareto principle. But it's even worse. The 80-20 principle that plays out in most things, it's to the extreme here. It's like 99-1. There's a small amount of people that are owning a majority of Bitcoin. Play that out in the future. As Bitcoin price rises, which it's going to need to for people to believe in it, the new people that are on board can get a smaller percentage of it.
And well, that's their fault for getting in late. Like,
well, when it comes to economics, and when we're talking about world economics for people, these are big topics. So you have a small super minority of people that own 90% of all Bitcoin in the world.
It doesn't. How is Bitcoin?
They're not going to own
still 21 million.
Let me ask you a question. How do you have a problem with central banking and governments and their control of fiat?
Because they can print more fiat. You can't print more Bitcoin.
But you don't have a problem with a super minority of Bitcoiners owning a majority of all of it in the future, and for one,
they don't control
because they can't change the rules of the game as they please. There isn't a small group of people that can
Max Kaiser literally talked about buying senators with all of his Bitcoin. We got crazy
that
people
would distribute. That would literally distribute the holdings that he has to other people.
It doesn't change the rules of the network. It's a programmatic monetary supply. That's the difference between.
So you guys don't think money buys
banking at all?
So you guys don't think money buys power and control?
Dude, they have to spend it with this, but they have to spend it. Do you see what you're saying?
Network.
Nodes control the network. Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you can buy off all of the senators if the nodes don't agree. Like you saw that with the block size wars. Like nodes control the network. It doesn't matter how many senators you buy off. That's the beauty of the system, is that it cannot be changed without consensus, and the nodes are what determines consensus.
They buy off the senators are going to spend it on luxury items, and all that Bitcoin just trickles down into the economy.
Yeah, but unfortunately, there's other aspects of life that's not just money and power and influence for social systems.
But like
and
you're saying, you're making that
together.
point, but like that is inherently the way that our current system works. We have certain people that are positioned closer to the monetary spigot, and they don't need to create value. So like the thing is, in a fully Bitcoinized world, which is going to be a long time from now, you need to exchange value for value. So if you people are going to need things. So even if you have a really, really large amount of Bitcoin, you're going to need to purchase things in the future. And so you need to exchange value for value, where with our current system, if you've positioned yourself as close as possible to the money printer, you don't need to create value, but you can still get dollars in exchange. So that's the difference. So let's just use El Salvador, for example. With this government wallet program that they're doing, they're giving each adult who downloads the wallet $30 in Bitcoin. So I think the amount is what, $130 million is what that costs. Is that right? I don't know how many people are in El Salvador.
That's close.
25 million, something like that. Yeah.
Like El Salvador is a dollarized nation, so they can't just print money out of thin air and then just give it to their citizens like we've done here with the stimulus. So they're taking $130 million, which they needed to kind of create value to come up with, and they're giving it to their citizens. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we're talking about, like exchanging value for value rather than being able to just kind of create value out of thin air and then go from there. So that's the difference with the current system versus a Bitcoin system. Is fairness is what the key point is.
Yeah, and that's an important difference, and I think it's a good one too.
And we were talking about that before you came on. Like the other day I tweeted fairness over equality. Now I think like that's an important thing to understand. Like you're absolutely right about the Pareto distribution. I have a company called Pareto Learning because of the 80-20 principle. So like if we create a system that's totally fair, which is impossible, of course, we're still going to have this Pareto distribution in any organization that any of us have ever worked in. We know this to be the case. 20% of the people create 80% of the value. Some people are smarter, more intelligent, and harder working than other people. So if we have a system that's completely fair, we're going to have wealth distributed in some Pareto type way, because that's just seems to be the way that things work out. And that's fine. We don't need equality. We need a system that's fair. And that's what Bitcoin provides.
And, I do want to add to that real quickly. So in that system too, with Bitcoin as the unit of standard, the people who don't bring as much value to the system, they can at least have comfort in knowing that if they store their savings, they don't need to rely on an investment vehicle or some BS form of investing to outpace inflation. They can literally just hold their money and know that as time continues on, that their money will be worth more over time versus a coin like Doge, where inflation is pre-programmed into it. I mean, inflation, like in this, and I think I said this in our tweet thread, that inflation is literally just the devaluation of time. That's all it is.
So just to jump on that point, first of all, I'd like to say I love that we're having this conversation, even though like I get worked up and get competitive. I think you guys can hear it. So I want to say thank you for bringing me on, and I like that we're able to have this debate. And as I started to get real aggressive, I think you guys all kept it like, you brought it back on track until I was able to realize that I was borderline about to start yelling. So I appreciate that from you guys.
Liminal, I appreciate your patience and willingness to debate. Yeah, go ahead.
About the like having like one reason why I don't like I'm generally like a free market person. Like competition is good in just about every instance. With money though, I don't think it makes as much sense, because I think about like the global foreign exchange market and how much, money is spent on that, but that's like not creating value. And so like in a future where, if we had Bitcoin and Doge and Ether and a whole bunch of different forms of currency, does some kind of, digital version of some kind of foreign exchange market kind of still exists then? And that's just a way where we're spending a lot of money on something that provides no value. So having one currency, one global currency, to me is something that eliminates the global exchange market, aside from a lot of other things that it does. It's one of something that we hopefully can all.
Yeah, and Nick, one more thing that like to add on, like the time frame that we're all talking about here is so much, like it's so long. We're talking decades and decades. And so like that's what makes these arguments really complex, is like things are the way they are right now, but Bitcoin's been around for 12 and a half years. Like we're looking out decades into the future. And so like it's really hard because we live in the present to talk about what's going to happen decades out into the future. And like gold has a history of 5,000 years. Like we've never seen a good be monetized in real time, so no one knows what the fuck they're really talking about. We're all just trying to kind of figure things out, and it's really, really hard to look out as far into the future as we're trying to look out. So that's what makes these conversations so.
Liminal, you still there, man? You might be muted. I'm not sure. I can't see.
Hard as well.
Check.
Died.
There we go. Am
I back?
Yep.
Yeah, no, I agree. This stuff is big, and it ties into all of our lives, geopolitics, and the lives of people that are going to come after us. There's just no easy solution, but being able to talk and chew on it a little bit and even argue, I think is a healthy thing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I appreciate you coming in here. One versus 5 is definitely never fun.
It gets my blood pumping, man. Like I want to get in there and fight, with I'm not a great speaker.
I get it. No, I get it. And can I be honest with you, Liminal? Most people on the other end wouldn't stick in here with us. I think at one point or another, Dennis has been around in the space a long time. I know at one point I was big into alts, but I think every Bitcoin maxi, or most of us can say, because I don't like speaking for everybody, they've been on the same journey you're currently on. And as you dive in more, have more conversations and more research, it's not that like I haven't looked into some of these alternative tokens. But when you get into the principles of true, hard, sound money, you see what's wrong with the current system. And then you remove the lens of, and Liminal, I have no idea where you're from. You don't have to say at all, but
my lens for a long time was just through the perspective of a US citizen. But when you see other countries like Venezuela, you see other countries like El Salvador, you see places where their form of currency, they're either subjugated to the money printing of the well, every country is, because we work on a US dollar, but you can compound that with a country that has a destabilized currency where their inflation and volatility is actually worse than what Bitcoin is right now. Mm-hmm. Bitcoin for them is a safe haven. And you look at like El Salvador, and you look at places like Tonga, and you see how much of their GDP is purely made up of like remittance payments. Like Bitcoin and the Lightning Network has created this world where they can send money back and forth without the limitations of a central bank or entity. And they can send money back and know that over time that money, and even now, I mean, like even with how volatile Bitcoin has been, I mean, year after year, it's returned an average of 200%. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if some people hold all the money in some wallets. Like anybody who's getting in right now and recognizes that, okay, I'm not going to make a quick buck. I might not even make a quick buck in a year, but at least I know I'm going to have some type of monetary gain. And I know no one's going to be able to fuck with my Bitcoin. No one's going to, if it's stored properly, nobody can take it from me. My time's not going to be devalued. And like Kenny was saying, like the time preference, I think the time preference is a hard thing for a lot of people to wrap their head around. Like you'll hear some Maxis say like this is happening within 2 years, and you'll have some other people say it happens within decades. But regardless, I think the most important things to look at is see who has the most to benefit from, and it's these emerging market countries and the people who are unbanked. Those are the two people who are going to see value first, and it's all the game theory. The way the game theory plays out is bottom up economics instead of trickle down like the dollar's supposed to work.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things about Bitcoin, and I hope that it succeeds. But I will say, as for me, I don't think that we're evolved enough as people to handle one world currency. With corruption just seems to creep in every time. Consolidation of power creeps in every time. And I don't like the idea of like one last big shot at it for the world. You know, I like the idea of competition. I'm always going to be a fan of that. I want new innovation to rise up and challenge to make something better, which is why I want the crypto market to exist.
I have a question. So it seems like your biggest like concern is that like power corrupts, and I agree with that. But like with competition in Bitcoin is inherently centralized. So I feel like any competition, the biggest concerns that you have, it's more likely that those concerns are exercised.
Yeah, so long as the Maxi mentality that there is only one can be
no, because like
tempered.
even look at Ethereum. Like Ethereum is centralized. There's just not really a way that anyone can argue against that. There's an Ethereum foundation. There's a pre-mine. The early developers hold a really, really large amount of ether. And nodes. The nodes aren't centralized. The nodes are run on Infura, which is run on Amazon Web Services. So like it's just centralized, where that's just not true about the Bitcoin network. And Ethereum is like seen as the most legitimate competition or alternative coin or whatever you want to call it. So that's just kind of where I have trouble squaring your argument, is like it seems like your biggest concern is that power corrupts and all of these types of things. And I agree with that. But like, what is the better alternative? I think that's where I'm.
A competitive market and
seeing. But like, look, dude, it's been a competitive market. There's been almost 10,000 competitors. Right. They've all failed. They all are failing. And nothing has been successful.
And the reason that they failed is if someone or some group has the ability to just print money, they're going to do it, and they're going to scam. Like it's just like how can there be sufficient competition where you have this thing that's truly decentralized and not controlled by anyone? I think I don't understand, like, how can there be competition?
I don't think any of us are here. You never hear Bitcoin Maxi, maybe someone, but a majority of us won't say, go and ban Ethereum, go and ban these shit coins. Like I'm all for them being out there, but like eventually anything good that comes from the space gets deployed on Bitcoin. I mean, we're seeing it with Taproot. We're seeing with the more privacy features that Taproot brings. Taproot brings the deployment of smart contracts. And what's most important is that the base layer protocol is decentralized. Layer 2s are, as the further you get away from the base layer, the less decentralized you are. There's obviously a market for people in smart contracts. So smart contracts will be deployed on Bitcoin. I personally.
So Alan, like, I think that's what, like, there should be competition,
yes,
and we should figure out what works elsewhere. We should continue letting these other chains and coins do their like little science projects, but eventually they can figure out which ideas are good and which ideas are bad. But the way that I see it, eventually everything is going to be built on top of the most secure and the most decentralized network. So like, I actually agree. Like there, none of us are saying that like competition shouldn't be allowed to happen. I think that the competition should happen. I just personally believe, because of the way I thought it out, that any good ideas, they're going to be built on top of Bitcoin because it's the most decentralized and the most secure. It's still actually the only decentralized and only secure network.
There's a lot of things that I want to jump in there and argue with a couple points, but
yeah,
I don't.
Please.
But I don't know if I need to, because I think look at the end of the day, yeah, look, be pro Bitcoin. Just don't shove everyone else out of the market as being irrelevant, because I think them existing is a positive force for cryptocurrency. And some maximalists, not all, but I think some of them want there to be no competition, because look, an investor wants to protect and lower the risk of their future returns. The best way to do that in the crypto market is to have no competition, so everybody defaults to going to Bitcoin. Now, that's not talking about cryptocurrency. That's talking about, and that's not all maximalists. I'm talking about people that treat cryptocurrency purely as an investment, looking for a return in fiat. Now, those types are out there. And
it's just funny because we were all at the Bitcoin conference, and like, I can tell you for a fact, I had maybe 2 conversations, and I was there for a week, about price. Like, I think I think for most people who are interested in Bitcoin, it's not, because like for most Bitcoin maximalists, it's a one-way trade. Like, I plan on any Bitcoin that I have, I plan on passing down to my grandkids. Like, so I think most Bitcoiners are not concerned at all with fiat gains, where most people that I talk about who are interested in other shit, they're trying to just get rich.
We aren't really concerned with defending Bitcoin against shit coins because we're worried about like losing. Like, honestly, we're like, we're not worried about losing at all. Like, that's why we have so much like confidence. We're not trying to be like, beat our chest and be like, Bitcoin's going to win no matter what, because, you know, we need to defend our turf. Like, it already has won. The game has pretty much already been played. 10,000 alternatives have been put out there for the free market to decide, and the market has chosen. And honestly,
it's only been around for 10 years, man. That's like, it's a drop in the bucket, and so many things have not been figured out. To say Bitcoin is just one
hasn't been figured out. That's the really beautiful thing about a free market, is we're all placing our bets now. You allocate your portfolio according to your beliefs, and over a long enough time horizon, we're eventually going to see who's right and who's wrong. Right.
And I'm all for that. And that's all I want to protect and bolster. I want to say, you know what, if Bitcoin's the best, then let's see it. Hell yeah. Let's get down, let's figure it out, and let's do the best thing that's right for people and not just our pocketbooks. And that I can get behind. And I've got my own opinions of why I think there's some better options out there, and that's fine. But let's make it about what's best for the people, and not like only Bitcoin.
I really think all of my best friends that I've met through Bitcoin, like, that is their attitude. If I were to describe it, I would actually have said those words exactly.
Well, I could tell you, as an outsider looking in, not in the sense of being outside of crypto, because I think, well, I don't need to say that. But from the outside look, I've been pushed away from Bitcoin. I find, for a lot of reasons that I won't go into, because I'm going to respect your guys' space. But I will say one thing I would love to see more from Maxis is that kind of attitude that you guys just shared. Less, you know,
we have a dramatic care for the world and for people. That's part of the reason why we tell people to stay away from all the other coins.
That's where the name like shitcoin came from. It's like,
but you call everything shitcoins, and that's not true.
Liminal,
I want
a different argument.
Liminal, I do want to acknowledge the fact that I appreciate the compliment there, at least for the room here. I know it's something the community's been trying to address what we see as, so when we say like Bitcoin's already won, like we see it as a matter of fact. We understand why other people view it as a matter of opinion. And that's fine. You know, everyone's on different journeys on their research, and that's okay. Opinions are a hard thing to mold and change, especially when you have a community that's so convicted. It can be a little bit repulsive, and I get that. But my biggest gripe with some of these other coins is when they spew inaccuracies. You have Vitalik saying that Ethereum's decentralized when he knows it is not, you know. And I think some of these coins will stick around. I just don't like that they're touted as currency, or that they're touted as decentralized. I think it'd be more appropriate to say that this is a hybrid stock. This is a form of venture capital. This is showing stake in a new form of company. And some of these will probably stick around in one way, shape, or form. They're just not going to be the money of the world, you know. And that's how I view it. And you're free to disagree with that. A lot of us in here have gone through a similar journey where I was the biggest proponent of Cardano for the longest time. I admit that all the time. And like,
well, I don't like that you're framing this as in like you'll get there one day, young pup. I think that we disagree, but I hear what you're saying. There's problems with China. I don't know if we should just launch into all this, or we could be talking forever.
Let's talk about China. I think that'll be
we're ready.
Okay, so yeah, one, I've doxed myself. China. 2, I'm anti-Bitcoin. I'm just signing up to get whacked here. Let's go after China too. Why not?
Fuck. I dox myself on a weekly basis. So
I'm sure Jacob can cut that out too, Alan.
Yeah, he can blur that out.
We can blur it. We can blur it out. I have no problems with that. I don't want. I want people to come in here and feel like they can at least have a conversation. So I get it.
So I'm not the biggest fan of China. Not the country, not the people, but the political policies that are currently in place. And that's a whole large conversation. But I hear a lot of look, it's no secret that China mines a ton of cryptocurrencies, a lot of Bitcoin. And then recently they came out and said they're banning all of it. But if you go look at the companies that are mining it, they're just moving. Like there's a couple big companies that are moving to Texas right now. And then I'm watching like on some Doge forums too, everybody's cheering, yeah, you know, American innovation. I'm like, it's not American innovation. It's a Chinese company that just bought land in Texas. It's the same result. You know, in terms of who's mining what, it seems to be, from what I can see, a majority of it is Chinese companies. And when you talk about a geopolitical landscape, which is completely over my head, I go back to that same argument that I seem to have for everything. I don't like one group having a majority control. And I think that does apply to Bitcoin, like does others.
So the miners don't control anything. I mean, I'm sure Kenny's probably going to jump on that, but.
Well, what I was going to say is that was the first one I was going to make, is basically like the kind of miners are just highly paid security guards. But I also am curious. So like your concern is about like one group controlling things. Like, do you think that China is interested in an open, decentralized network that nobody can control? I feel like China would be much more interested in a CBDC type alternative where they can implement a social credit score and surveil their citizens. So in my opinion, if you just think about like what it seems like their regime is concerned with, it seems like Bitcoin is antithetical to anything that China would be interested in. Right?
I don't think we would all like agree with you general stance on China, but from our point of view, it just seems like this is a difference of opinion that like we see as Bitcoin as like you said, like that's actually actively fighting against that, whereas you see it the other way around. But
yeah, no, so I do agree with you guys, and I actually do think that the foundation of Bitcoin is antithetical to this, and that's what's really good about Bitcoin. But my tinfoil hat on, reading between lines and seeing the UFOs, says that the best way to defeat your enemy is to make them your friend or become your enemy. So by taking over a dominant crypto, you can then control it, and then by playing it as your enemy, you know, and then you get into
but like how would they take control over the network. Like you just can't take control over the Bitcoin network through miners. Like unless somehow China's deployed majority of the node. Like
for me to answer that gets into stuff that is so unfounded, it's not even worth putting it onto your podcast, because it's
I want to get into it, but before we do, I just want to acknowledge something that is fact. So these miners, so in order to mine Bitcoin, obviously we all know, hot in the news, proof of work versus proof of stake. We can get into why proof of work's better than proof of stake if you want. But it requires energy, and it requires a lot of it as competition increases and there's more computers on the network, more computers, more security. But regardless, so when these big mining pools are mining Bitcoin, there's a huge capital cost to do that. And so when they get rewarded in this Bitcoin, these miners have to sell off they can't just hold on to Bitcoin, or else they wouldn't have any way to pay off of their mining costs. So they sell it off. And the beauty of selling it off means that money gets decentralized through the network. So
do you have proof that they sell it off? Because that's an argument that I haven't heard. And
there are some really good Glassnode charts. We were talking to Will Clemente the other day, and he actually pulled some good ones up. I can either DM and ask him for it, or we can look for it.
I mean, I'll look for it here.
That's a great argument then against any concerns that a person like me would have, because my concern is if you have one major company or two or three, clearly, we know collusion happens, and if they're all mining the Bitcoin and they're able to subsidize it, hold on to it, I'm like, that's an alarm.
Well, I think that there is a way to do it. Like, and Michael Saylor's made this point where, like, if you're a publicly traded miner, you can essentially finance yourself with equity and borrow a bunch of money, and that's a way to hold on to your coins. But like, then once a company is publicly traded, they need to do, their disclosure requirements are much higher. So I think people would have insight into whether they're holding coins or not.
Also, they're gonna have to sell. I mean, I know there's charts out there. There are Glassnode charts, but they are going to have to sell some of their Bitcoin in order to stay in business, unless you have some situation like a Michael Saylor situation where they're borrowing large amounts of money, but nothing like that has ever been unveiled or discovered for these miners. The reason they have to sell is because they have electrical costs, massive capital costs when it comes to buying new equipment in order to stay competitive in the market, and because you can't just keep mining with the same hardware forever. Eventually you have to upgrade. So it's impossible really for the miners to hold on to or hoard all of the Bitcoin that they receive. They have to spend it on the electrical costs by selling it on the market, probably for fiat, and then also they have to also sell Bitcoin in order to buy new mining hardware. So there will be charts there. I've seen them, but also just if you play out game theory it's impossible for these miners to hold on to the Bitcoin long term.
Kenny, you might have to DM Will for those charts, because I need a professional account to view them.
Oh, right. Okay, I can send him a message.
I'm looking on his Twitter here real quick to see if he's posting.
I get the point that you're making about, like, if Bitcoin is the money of the world, and a small group of people hold most of that, or the vast majority of that gives them like a different power, but it doesn't, that doesn't give them power over the Bitcoin network itself. That's granted by the nodes.
Yeah, my argument is just in sociopolitically, in the rest of life, it gives them a lot more control. And
so there's one chart right here just recently. This isn't like a huge time frame, but you can see just in the past month, we can see that they have been selling, especially with the China crackdown. I know like we all laugh at the China bans, but recently this one's been significantly different. Just that China's been instructing their central bank to not allow exchange purchases on things like Coinbase and stuff, but also they've cracked down on the hydro mining, which is something they've typically left untouched. And so some of these big mining pools that are moving to the United States, in order literally to facilitate the cost of moving their entire operation, they've had to sell off a lot of their holdings. They don't sell every single Bitcoin that they mine, but in order to maintain operational costs, they do sell a majority of them. And it goes back to my other point too, like there's no point on holding Bitcoin if you're never going to spend it. You can't do anything with it just holding it,
Well, I like the idea, like, if CoinX is really popular and the people that got in early made the right moves, they deserve the wealth that they got off of that from having the guts to do it when nobody else believed in it. 100%. I agree with that. But it's hard to break that distribution. I think that's fair to say. And to have a rival competitor rise up with some other young Turks, that got in and did the same thing that they can no longer do with the other one. To me, that seems that kind of competition, the distribution of, opportunity for someone else smart to get in on the ground floor or something. I like that. And so I'd like that for crypto. I think that would keep Bitcoin on its toes. I think it's fair.
Let me propose another point here. So I agree on the surface level that, like, if something better were to come along, I'd be all in it. But the problem is I don't see any way possible of something better happening, because at the point we're at, when Satoshi Nakamoto, we don't know if it was a single person. We don't know if it was a group of people who made it, but there is a philosophical problem at hand with how money was working. There was no financial incentive at all. So when Satoshi made Bitcoin, it was literally worth nothing, absolutely worth nothing. It was worth whatever little bit amount of money the people around it had thrown in. And Bitcoin's grown in value over time because adoption has increased and increased, but it's grown in value in US dollars. A lot of maxis, myself included, I don't evaluate what my Bitcoin's worth in fiat. To me, 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin. Lost my train of thought there. But someone help jog my
Alan
memory.
makes a really good point, though, when it comes to Bitcoin, that, yeah, theoretically, if something were to come along that was better, we would obviously be willing to take a look at it. But really, it would be very difficult for anything to become better than Bitcoin. It is near and close to the most perfect money that human beings have ever had. And it's quite a significant leap forward to try to say that someone could just all of a sudden create something that's so much better that we would be willing to switch is a difficult argument to make. Bitcoin's core properties of being permissionless, borderless, verifiable, independently verifiable, programmable, decentralized, hard money. So it's got a hard supply cap, extremely stable issuance, and it's
censorship resistant.
Censorship resistance. It's the trust minimized network is what makes it so valuable, and it's already so much better at all of those things in the current system that to try to say that you would even jump even further out from there is a very difficult theory to have. I don't see it happening anywhere in the near future in our lifetimes.
Yeah. Well, in any new currency, the final point I wanted to make was that any new currency that would be made, I just don't see it not being made without the incentive or greed to capitalize on a new monetary movement.
I don't see it being made without some of this Andreessen Horowitz $2.2 billion crypto fund.
So this is where I shake my hips with my golf club, and I got a little tennis. I got a little golf ball sitting on the tee, and I'm just gonna whack it out of the park and say Doge to the moon. Because do you guys want to? Will that just rip you guys apart to go into why Doge is good, or?
I wrote a whole article on why Doge is garbage, so I'd love to hear your points.
Unpopular opinion in a lot of these spaces. All right, so I'll try to do it quickly. Large circulating supply necessary for currency. It's a fixed issuance yearly, which is good because inflation, although is such a bad word right now, for currency to function, it requires inflation. You need to keep it circulating. That helps reduce lower fees, and the fact that it's a fixed issuance, that means that the rate of inflation every year goes down, which is an experiment that we haven't seen before, but you have seen it similarly with. The only thing you've seen it similarly with is the granddaddy Bitcoin, only it's doing it in a different way with the halving. All right, so you got a large enough pool size, you have a fixed rate of added yearly allowance that helps with mining and keeping fees low. You have the whole concept of the meme, which is a fantastic thing. And then you have it backed by, and this is what everybody hates, but you have somebody that's backed by like Elon Musk with a whole ton of connections. You have
this goes against like the main point you've been making this whole time, doesn't it? That
no,
you don't like having power in the hands of.
I don't want Doge to be the only currency of the world. I don't want any currency. I don't think we're equipped to handle that as humans yet. But as a competitor to Bitcoin, I also don't want Bitcoin to go away. I think it's fantastic, so long as it doesn't become this authoritative monster. And so I think success for Doge is success for Bitcoin. It's internet money. It doesn't need to replace anything. But I think it has all the components to be a successful currency. I don't see how it doesn't. I don't see how that's not utility. And if Doge doesn't have the utility, then Bitcoin definitely doesn't.
We don't need multiple coins.
I was gonna say, who wants to get into this?
It's an old argument to say we need multiple coins. It's like saying you sound like more so like the guy that's like just discovered electricity, like is trying to show it to you, and he's like, here's electricity, and you're like, well, humans aren't equipped for that. Like, have you seen the actual propaganda that people used to put out and be like, electricity is dangerous, like we can't use this stuff? Like, that's kind of like where you sound like you've been exposed to a new technology, and you're saying that like humans are not equipped to be able to use this technology. Well, same thing with the internet, but humans evolve when they're introduced to a superior network, when they're introduced to a superior product, when they're introduced to superior money, and humans will evolve. It's just that it's taking time for them to catch up. On average, it takes a new technology 20 years for humans to adapt to. But that's a very short time frame. Typically, it could be even much longer than that. So, but just going back to like Doge itself, like as an actual cryptocurrency, when you compare it to like all the other currencies out there, I'm not saying it's here's the thing about Doge is it actually does have some funny things about it that make it actually an interesting project. One is that the premise that it was nobody really cared about it in the beginning, which made it more fair, which is probably the only positive thing about the project whatsoever. But aside from that, the supply is extremely centralized. It's like one of the most centralized supplies.
Wait,
the development team is. What do I mean by that?
Yeah. Why is it the most centralized supply?
What do you mean why? It's just a matter of that it is, that you look at the charts and you understand that it is centralized.
No. Give me a real answer there.
One wallet owns 30% of the entire supply, dude.
So you're going to use the same argument that you were arguing against with Bitcoin for against Doge? Because that doesn't work. No, the largest one is Robinhood. And we can't know that for sure.
That's just one wallet. Like you're talking about one wallet.
No, here's the thing with Doge is it's not popular amongst crypto fights. People.
You want to move on from that one? The development team is extremely tiny and centralized.
No, you just jump.
There's almost no decentralized time. There's almost
let's stay on centralization of supply.
Why does it even matter if you don't agree on the way that we can make points on that topic? There's no reason to even debate it, because when I make the point, listen, when you made the point that it was extremely centralized on the wallets, you agreed and said it was an acceptable point.
I was trying to complete my thought, but
when I made that point, you said it was not allowed to be made because of points.
That's not what I did.
Okay, so that's why I'm saying let's move on from it, because obviously it's not a good point.
You don't want to let me say my complete point because it might be pretty impactful.
Go ahead and finish it.
You want to jump on?
Let's move on. Once you're done from it, though, I don't care to.
You don't want to hear it.
No, go ahead. I said go ahead.
Yeah. So the majority of new people coming into crypto are attracted to Doge because of the meme. They're buying on exchanges. That's common sense. So we know a majority of the distributions are on exchanges. As I would argue a lot more than people holding their Bitcoin in exchanges.
You're just flipping the argument the opposite way. We're both doing the same thing. That's why it's stupid to even continue arguing this point.
That's what I said. That's what I said. So that's what I said.
You're flipping and now saying the same argument that I made for Bitcoin earlier.
Exactly.
So I'm saying.
So how is that negative for Doge?
We're both approaching. So we're both approaching this point from a bad angle. So we should both move on. That's why I was saying.
I did that as a joke to troll you because you wanted to argue fiercely that Bitcoin is not centralized. And so I'm saying, all right, how's Doge worse? It's not. Come on.
That's just why I said we should move on, because we're both approaching this from the wrong angle, and you just agreed with me. So the development team is extremely tiny and centralized. There's almost no development whatsoever on Doge.
Don't gloss over these. Let's go through them.
I'm not glossing over them. Let's go ahead and talk about this next point.
Yeah, development team first of all, you want to talk about championing decentralization. You don't have a CEO or any kind of and people like to say the development team isn't doing anything. It's doing some fantastic things, and just go look into who the devs are. They're brilliant, and they're doing some awesome things.
Let's look on GitHub. Who?
I can't believe I'm the champion of Doge. I'm a digital artist. Hold on, let me go get them. 1 second.
Can you?
So I just want to chime in here a little bit so we don't have some dead air. For people who don't know, so Doge is a fork of Litecoin. Litecoin's a fork of Bitcoin. Doge was originally created as a joke currency, just for fun. I don't want to say joke. It was created for fun. People utilized it. People utilized it on Reddit. They could say, hey, I tipped you $1 billion Doge. It was literally worth like nothing. So, and it was also created in like the two creators. And I actually posted, let me find it here, a tweet from one of the creators, but it was created by two brothers. They worked at IBM. They literally just copy and pasted and tweaked. They literally copy pasted just the base layer code from Bitcoin.
Made it in like 30 seconds. It was a joke. It was never intended to be what it is today. 100%.
Well, it's really important when you look at the foundation of anything. I mean, it's Thiel's law. When you start to take a look at the foundation of any corporation, any company, any project, if it was created as a joke, it has a bad and poor foundation, and it's built into its DNA, and it will always be a joke, which means it will never really be a global currency.
So two things there. One, its foundation and its genetic code is Bitcoin. 100%. That's why it works. That's what it is. Bitcoin is the granddaddy of them all. I'm never going to argue against that. Okay, so it's copied.
What's the best use case for Doge? Like, I don't even understand what the use case is. Why don't you explain it to me?
To be used as a currency.
Why would I use it as a currency though if I have Bitcoin?
Well, let's. I think a better question is it's very similar to how the dollar works. So why would I use Doge over the dollar?
You guys are asking me a lot of questions. So it's not similar to the way the dollar works because the dollar has infinite inflation. It's money printer go burr. They decide yearly.
So does Doge.
The same argument that I was just. This is such a stupid conversation. Oh my god.
So Doge has a fixed yearly issuance. It doesn't change. It's the same amount added every year, 5 billion coins. We're at 130 billion right now that we just crossed. So the inflation rate was like, what was it like? It was like 3.11% inflation in 2019, and then it went down to 2.97. So every year the inflation rate is reducing because the same 5 billion is added every year, but the pool gets bigger. The 130 billion coin pool size that exists is good for a carrying capacity for a currency. That's the size you want to be usable, which is why that is its use case, to be used as an actual currency.
Nobody will adopt Doge though if it moves into what you're claiming to be is like the currency phase too quickly. Like the whole reason people adopt Bitcoin is because of the number grow up, and that's how it causes it actually to be adopted over time. Well, so Doge is moving too quickly past that phase. But the other thing is it's just really kind of funny, dude. It's like why is Doge, which is an absolute joke bullshit project, like the number one coin you're going to promote? Like that's really what you're going to like try to like. So that's what the hill you're going to die on is the bullshit coin.
Crypto nerds don't get, because for all of their technical brilliance and knowing the industry and the market, they can't see the larger picture of what makes good marketing and what makes good businesses succeed. And the memetics of
it's not about marketing, man. Bitcoin has had zero marketing, and it's the most successful.
Because it was the first, and it has had tons of marketing. There's so
Bitcoin
much
was not. It was not the first. Bitcoin was not the first.
There were many coins that came before Bitcoin that failed. Bitcoin is cryptocurrency perfected. That's why it's so successful.
Okay, look, so we're going to go off on a whole nother thing. The point of memetics, you go back to your comparison with the internet. You know, the people love memes and the consolidation of an idea encapsulated into something simple that's transferable. Memetics is also synonymous with currency itself. So there is something, whether accidental or not, there's something very fascinating with that, the way that they interact. And I'm just saying, don't count it out. I'm not here to say Bitcoin's dead. No.
Yeah. Kenny, do you have something to add, or are you good?
Well, I think No, I gotta go soon, but I think this is like you were originally saying like you're against maximum. Like this is the toxic maximalist thing, because I get to a point where I get this conversation. We were like having a good conversation, and now the conversation has gotten into territory where it's so fucking stupid, where like it just gets to the point where I'm not fucking having this conversation, and that's where like the toxicity thing comes in. It's not because I'm closed-minded. It's just because I don't want to talk about something that's fucking retarded.
Yeah, but why is it retarded?
Because it's just it doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous conversation.
No, the ridiculous joke of it is what made it popular amongst people that aren't in crypto. So its adoption rate is higher than any other cryptocurrency. It's been onboarding new people, and you can see that in the quote unquote data. People don't understand cryptocurrency, but they love Doge. You're talking about
you're gonna lose Kenny, bro.
Yeah, I'm out. I gotta go.
That's huge. On top of that, everything about it is built on Bitcoin. So you love Bitcoin, but you don't love Doge. I think it's because
it's just, dude, you're just trying to defend like the most like ridiculous project. It's like it's such a scam. Like it's such a joke. Like
130 billion coins. It actually has the size to be the carrying capacity of a currency.
It doesn't matter. You don't need more coins. We already discussed this.
No,
you don't.
Supply.
Nope, you don't. Because it's infinitely divisible. You don't need more.
Divisible comes to a percentage distribution issue where you make certain people super fucking wealthy.
It doesn't matter. It's the amount of coins really doesn't matter.
Political economics in the world matters.
It doesn't matter how many coins. You're getting into unit bias.
That's not unit bias.
Look up unit bias, dude. It doesn't matter how many coins there are.
You just can't see the big picture. Competition is good.
It's shit competition. You should pick a different coin.
It might be shit competition, but it's here and it's not going away. And that's a tough pill, but that's what it is.
Well, have fun using your Dogecoin, dude. It's a trash project.
I think
it's not going anywhere.
I think we'll leave it
all right.
at this. Yo, Liminal. It was a good conversation
up until the end, but thanks for hanging in. It was nice to meet you guys, and I appreciate you bringing me on here.
Appreciate it was fun. On. I enjoyed it.
I'm about to get trounced online because of you guys. I hope you know that.
I'm not as big as you think I am. I mean, maybe Dennis. I don't know, but
I'm a pleb. I'm nobody.
But Liminal, I appreciate you coming on, man. Especially into a toxic Bitcoin room. Take some cojones.
You guys have given me some more faith in the whole Bitcoin maximalist, because I had a view that did not involve the attitudes that I've seen here today. So I appreciate that.
No, it was a good conversation. It's fun to get a little bit heated.
Yeah.
Take care, Liminal.
Agreed. Take care.
Bye.
All right. I put him in the waiting room. I appreciate you. Okay, Dennis, Kenny, I really appreciate really appreciate you guys
I'm done.
On. Yeah. I mean,
I get it. I mean, the thing about me that's maybe something stupid, but I could basically just do that shit all day, like fucking poke on people. But but you're right. It comes to a point where you're just like, this is so stupid. Like you're really supporting the worst project that you could possibly support, even though it's all shit,
like,
right?
But conversations evolve. Like that's the point that I get to where it's like, well, now this is just ridiculous and we all sound stupid. So like, it's just.
Talking about memes or whatever, like the memes. Now we need a CEO. Like he said something about how you guys don't even have a CEO. It's like, that's the whole point, dude. Like you're missing the whole thing where we don't want power centralized.
I do respect him for coming on, and we did have I think a pretty decent conversation. So
people tend to have better conversations when they are attacking Bitcoin, because it's like we can give like these like great back and forth like conversations, but as soon as they start trying to support their coin, I mean, it's just not enjoyable as much anymore, because the things that they try to say to support their coin like just sound ridiculous.
No, I liked how you threw his argument back at him, like with the wallets, one of the wallets having all I think it was like 60% or whatever, and he was just like, I'm like, dude, it was
I shouldn't have flipped it like that, because there was a bad, because he made that point earlier about Bitcoin, and I was making it about Doge. And as soon as he said that, I was like, okay, well, let's move on, because we're just going to be attacking it. We're like switching sides on the same topic. So let's move on. And he was like, no. And I'm like, I'm not moving on because I don't think I'm going to, like, it's not about winning or losing. It's just that we're just going to say the same shit we said last time, but sit in different chairs. Like, it's stupid. Like, let's move on.
Kenny's reaction there just sums it up. Just like, we're never gonna get anywhere.
I did a couple of those.
I know, sir. I'm like, fun.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you guys coming on. This is the third Sunday Scaries. And I love that it's so impromptu and that we got somebody off of Twitter literally to come on and debate their point. And while I completely 100 disagree with everything he said, I think for a lot of people out there, this is going to help versus trying to read a Twitter thread that just goes back and forth. I think people can formulate their own opinions over something like this much better.
Yeah, well, that's what happens in Clubhouse a lot too. I mean, we when we talk to people back and forth, especially when you have almost like a panel of people that are able to rebut many of the points he makes, because I can't even, stand up here and debate every single thing he said the best. Like Kenny jumped in, you jumped in there. I think
Moist and Nick both jumped in a couple times too.
Nick jumped in a couple times with some good points as well. Yeah. But
I gotta hop, guys.
No, for sure, Kenny. Yeah, no, thanks for coming on, man. Have a good weekend.
You too, guys. Bye.
Yeah, but it's like, it's like inevitably it's better when you have like a group of people versus just trying to do it yourself, because you can't, like, there's just so much ground to cover. Some
great technicals to just philosophy. I mean, it's impossible for any one person to just address properly some of the points. And sometimes
you just get beat down too. You get worn out, like trying to do it all yourself, and you almost like get just frustrated, and you just don't even want to like talk anymore. And so it's better to have sometimes like take a break and then let someone else jump in. That's what we do on Clubhouse. What you just did here, and it works very effectively for letting other people hear those arguments. The best argument every time comes through somehow, and so it's fun to do these kind of things.
Well, and it helps us refine our own arguments against it too. Exactly. I mean, talking about the points, and there's sometimes like I want to get stumped. Like I enjoy being stumped because it's like, okay, obviously I'm not well educated enough. I know they're wrong. I just got to figure out how to word the answer properly next time, and I think that's what a lot of us are doing. And surprisingly,
the only thing I will say just real quick on that point is I had a similar kind of viewpoint too as well, but it's also important to make sure that when you are doing that kind of situation, I think it's definitely helpful and beneficial, especially if you're doing it in private, but we have to be really careful about doing that, because I've made this mistake about doing that publicly. Be like trying to get into a situation where you're like, oh, I'm okay with debating one-on-one, because if I get stomped, then I'll like have better arguments. Well, you just got stomped in front of 400 people, 500 people potentially, and now they're going and thinking, oh, maybe I was wrong about Bitcoin. So it is something that we do have to be careful as a community. I've made this mistake and been educated better on it, that we don't put ourselves in a situation where, listen, it's good for me to sharpen my points by getting stomped publicly is just something we have to be careful about. I learned about it recently myself, and I think it's an important point. That's why I loved that we had this group of people on here talking, because we were able, when someone was like, even myself, not attacking it from the right angle, not saying the right things to making it work, someone else was able to jump in and approach it from a different angle and really send it home. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with that. I should have prefaced that. Like,
I'm sure that's what you knew that.
Yeah, that's 100% like what I meant. Like obviously I'll be the first to admit I don't have the cojones to jump in to a room with somebody one-on-one. Like it's tough. But I do feel a little bad for Liminal, and I will address this here too, that like people are going to be, I'm sure someone's going to say, they're going to be like, there was 5 of you and only 1 of him. And I admit that there was, like we had the benefit of being able to iron out our thoughts and ideas better than he did. But I can promise you, and I hope in the future we get some other altcoiners in here, but even if the numbers were spaced out, our arguments would still hold up against them.
Yeah.
No matter what.
No, it's true. It's very true. It's fun to do these kind of things. So I appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on, Dennis. To our listeners, we do this every Saturday. I know it's titled Sunday Scaries, but it's impossible for me to record and have Jacob edit and upload all in the same day. So I post on my Twitter handle at Alan Hoddle the day before with the Zoom link. And then I post again one more time, 30 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes. I'm not super consistent on it. But this time that we do record is the same every week. It's 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. click on the most recent Zoom link that's on the Twitter. It's also on our podcast Twitter, COB podcast. Dennis was previously on one of our episodes. He runs a great podcast, and he's also a great Twitter follow. Dennis, I'll let you plug that yourself.
Yeah, so I got my Smart People Shit podcast that I started, having a really great time. Had on guys like Jimmy Song, Corey Clipston, Mike Peterson from Bitcoin Beach. I really, really enjoy getting these great guests on. So I try to only bring on, high quality people, have high quality conversations. I also am an avid Twitter shit poster. So if you like to hear people talk bullishly about Bitcoin and talk shit about other coins, then you'll want to come check out my Twitter. It's I changed it. So it's at Dennis_Porter_. Pretty easy to find. Even if you just type Dennis Porter into any sort of Twitter thing, I'll pop up. I'm the most popular Dennis Porter out there. So even though there is one actual other Dennis Porter in Bitcoin, I think he even has more followers than me, but I'm more popular at this point, in my opinion. Yeah, but he spells it differently. It's like French, so it's like PEUTREX. Yeah. Which is funny because I'm actually very French also. So it's but I have a really good time on the internet. I try to write a little bit. He was showing me my old outdated Doge article. Obviously I need to get rid of that, change some of the things around the centralization of supply, or maybe not make it my first point. But I do some writing as well, but I have a really good time talking about Bitcoin. I got started in January, spent about 500 hours on Clubhouse, and I've just been moving forward ever since then. It's been a great time. You and Moist were one of the first people to invite me on. To their live shows. So I appreciate that. And I look forward to, continuing to spread the good message of Satoshi even further with you into the future.
That's the point, man. That's the point. So, all right, everybody, have a great weekend, and thanks for tuning in.